My real father was a pedophile, pled guilty to my sister. I've been working since the age of 10, mowing lawns, washing cars, walking dogs, cleaning out home. In high school, I knew everybody and everybody knew me, but nobody knew me. I have no money for a bus ticket. I have no money for a plane ticket. I have nothing. The only thing that was free to me, which was walking. And so I walked from Virginia to Mexico to see my daughter for the first time. I've been trying to figure that out, how to discuss this with her, because she doesn't speak English. Even now, our relationship is strange. I should have done this. I could have done this. If this only happened, if this only took place, those things will stop you from living your life.
Timothy, why don't you start from the very, very beginning?
Man, there's so many things that lead us to where we are in the day. With my childhood wasn't the greatest. And honestly, that's the thing about me personally, is that my childhood, before about the age of roughly 9, I actually don't remember. And maybe that's a mental block to help save my mentality, my mind, from the issues that we had. My real father was a pedophile, pled guilty to my sister. So, our childhood was upended from that. After that, my adolescence was not as great either. It was better than being stuck in that situation. Our mother did everything she could to protect my sister, to protect us, me and my brother, from that devastation, and she did all she could. She was the backbone of our family. She was the strength when there wasn't any. Even when she didn't have strength, she was the strength that carried us all through. But she happened to jump into a relationship with a man that was an alcoholic, which then teenage years wasn't that great either. It happened to be a huge ordeal where, screaming, fighting, loud music. We would have our stuff stolen. I would have toys, other things of that nature that was stolen to be sold so it could fuel his alcohol. We would pick up aluminum cans off the street to help get money for the family, but we didn't have a lot of money. So there was all types of issues throughout my childhood that, did more damage than what I had thought. Obviously, if I can't remember before the age of 8, that says a lot in itself. And then, having an alcoholic stepfather with all those issues and all those problems. I've been working since the age of 10. So when I was starting work, I was doing mowing lawns, washing cars, walking dogs, cleaning out home. Everything that I could to kind of help our family out, be able to eat and survive, So it wasn't forced upon me by any means. It's something that was inside me, I guess, that said, I want to help my mom out as much as I possibly can. And that was the best way that I knew how.
The person that you're supposed to rely on and trust and, kind of be such a huge disappointment in that sense. And I'm sort of curious as to, before all of you guys, that your dad was kind of doing all of this stuff, at least your sister, he pled guilty. How did it come out to the family the very first time?
I honestly don't know. Really, honestly, do not remember. I remember a little bit of the court dates, the stuff that happened after the fact, when everything really started to going through. Honestly, my mind is a blank. When people say, what was your childhood like? Where were you? How was it? That is one of the most difficult things, although at the same time, it's also possibly why I'm in a better situation than what my brother and sister is right now. I'm not all put together, But my sister, when she was younger, she was in and out of psych facilities and things of that nature. My brother, it became self-sustained. He didn't talk about his feelings. It really affected him as well, but in a different sense. So there's a lot that I don't know about. And unfortunately, my mother has passed now. So even if I was to like say, okay, I want to find out some information, what was it like? How did it happen? Those answers are no longer there. My real father is still alive, but it's not something that I want to discuss with he about at all whatsoever.
What is your relationship with your siblings like? And how much do they kind of remember?
No, our relationship is strained. My brother doesn't really like to talk whatsoever. I talk to him maybe on Christmas or around that time, and around his birthday. I would stop by when I was in America. When I was there, I would stop by his work, and see him for a short moment or two. My sister, she has her own issues even to this point in time. She does still talk to me or communicate with me through social media. So our communication is little to none. The biggest thing for me is that I wish that I could help them. I wish that I earned enough money that I could say, okay, my brother, here's the money. This is what's going to help you. We're going to clean your slate, pay off your bills. My sister, hey, what do you need? What can we do for you? But I don't even have that capability of barely feeding myself and my family, let alone anything else. So because of our lifestyle and how we were in our poor situation, it's one of those things where I happen to not be able to afford those type of things, to be able to help the way I would like to help. I really do wish I could do more.
It sounds like you remember more about your teenage years. What was that like for you, going to school, making friends, having role models, having males around? Did you kind of feel like a lack of trust in men?
I was known by everybody, but known by nobody. I was always the one that was bullied or teased in schools. I went to 4 or 5 different elementary schools. My real father was military. So my brother, born California. I was born Ohio. My sister, Rhode Island. There wasn't a solid, okay, this is where we're living. We've lived here for 20 years now and all that. I went to 2 different middle school or junior high schools. I was able to attend 1 high school. And that's really where I was, but I was not involved in the school whatsoever. I never got involved. I was always working. So it wasn't like I had free time to just go hang out with people, even if I wanted to. There was a place called Game Masters that was a very big part of my adolescence. I had my escape from my reality in that place. I was the one that would sit more up front towards the class than the back of the class. I was the one that would be, more quiet than anybody. I would not interact with people. I had my own worries at home, couldn't bring friends home, things of that nature, even if I made friends. There's certain schools that have certain cliques, certain types of people, the popular kids, the goth kids, the Christians, So we had all those cliques and stuff, and I knew somebody from each different clique. I knew everybody, and everybody knew me, but they didn't know me. Right immediately after high school, I was into the boot camp for military. I enjoyed the people there, but because of my issues from my childhood, they actually caught up to me while I was in the military. And I actually was supposed to be in there for a lot longer than what I was supposed to be. So I went in the year 2000, and I got out at year 2002. I really didn't realize how much my stepfather had affected my life until a military buddy and he went to go into another state overnight. So he needs somebody to drive with him. So, but there was a song that had came on the radio that really struck a chord with me for some reason. It came out of the blue. I didn't realize it at the time, but I just started bawling. It was one of those loud songs that my stepfather would play. And he asked me if I wanted him to change it. And I said, no, let it play through. I didn't understand what was going on, but that was kind of the start of the downfall of my military career. I didn't realize how much I was affected by things. From the bad comes the good. And honestly, the thing is I would have never been in the movie theater to meet my wife where that took place. That was one of the best things and one of the most stressful things that has happened to me in my life. So
people say that in the healing journey, it's important to tap into some of the hardest times that, you've experienced and sort of like learn to communicate with that inner child and forgive and kind of move on. Because if you live with that memory either repressed or that memory kind of not allowing it to resurface, then you're not really giving your body and your mind a chance to sort of really, dig deep and come out of it in a healthy way that kind of your body and your mind needs. Was that the first time that you told someone about what was the trigger and what had really been going on in your life? Would you say that that was the very first time you'd shared it?
probably I never really have talked openly about my real father, because again, not the memory of it. My stepfather, that was probably one of the first times that really things just kind of flooded out, to say. And we're actually still good friends to this day. We still reach out to each other even now. But yeah, it was probably one of the first times that I actually kind of confronted it, tried to deal with it as best as I could. When I was in the military, they have therapy sessions and things of that nature to try to figure out what it is and all that stuff. Because I was having back issues. I've never had back issues, but back spasms and things of that nature. I never connected the dots with the psychological portion of that, how your body reacts under stress and under anxiety and all that stuff. And it's a different levels of how you deal with things, that how your body responds to the stress levels. It's our bodies react in so many different ways to the stresses of what is presented to us. And so, dealing with the life and the way it was, I never focused on it. I was always focused on work. As they say, busy hands keep you from getting into trouble, and that's kind of what it was. My hands were digging for the work that I was doing constantly, just constantly cycling the jobs and not really focused in on the trauma that I was living through.
Can you walk me through how did sort of this military thing come to an end and sort of how you met your wife? Because that's such a beautiful story of its own.
Absolutely. So it was 2002. So this was after September 11th attacks. I was in during the time of that. So that really had a great effect on a lot of people. My job dealt with war. I was a forward observer for the field artillery. So that's where you look for the enemy while the enemy's looking for you, and you call the artillery to tell them to blow them up. That's what my job was in the military. And I never got to actually do my job. I was part of a headquarters battery. About 6 months after I finally got out, my wife, we met end of 2006, beginning of 2007. And that's where our story started. I happened to move back to Virginia to help assist my mom. Tried to help support her in any way that she needed because she was having issues living with my sister, during that time and stuff. My mom is diabetic, was having cataracts. She's had strokes. She had a triple bypass. She's had so many issues. It actually came down to where at the end of her life, they were starting to have to amputate her legs a piece at a time. So I'm in America, in Virginia, and I'm working at a movie theater, and my wife happens to come, and she's working there as an overnight crew now. So to give you an idea, she is Mexican. She's working the movie theater. She works there overnight as a cleaning crew. I work there during the day, and it was one of those things because she spoke no English and I spoke no Spanish. So actually, our very first date, she actually had a friend of a friend come along to translate for us. So it was something, she had 2 kids in Mexico that she was trying to earn money to try to help her kids out. Her boy, he has cerebral palsy. In Mexico, you're not given many opportunities to live life. And there's not much that you can do for earnings and not much you can do for the health of a sick child like that. but they did have a class that would help teach her. Then she would take those lessons basically back home and help the child out if she could. So she actually had to have herself, her sister, and her mother work on this child all at once. One working the arms, one working the legs, one working the head. So basically helping the motor functions of this child. And so she came to America to do the work and to attempt to support them and give them that proper life. And it just happened to be that she was there working overnights in the theater. I was working during the days. I was always there. I was at night when we are looking to close. There was one time she showed up like 3-4 hours prior to us even closing. I didn't know what she was doing or why she was there, but in my mind, I'm like, what's this woman doing here? She's crazy. And I said the word, just in passing, I said, you're local. Why are you here so early? And I just kept on going to do my work, not realizing that to them, when you call them crazy, they're going to show you crazy. They take very offense to being called crazy. And so because she couldn't speak to me, she really wanted to cuss me out. So she actually took like a week or two to try to learn English to cuss me out. And so the one time that she actually finally started to talk to me, the only thing she could really do was ask me my name. And from that, I'm like, you know what? I'm going to take a chance. I want to know who she is, more about her. And so I brought this dictionary with me and just went word by word, single word at a time. And it took us about 2 hours, but we figured out like 4 different things about each other. You know, what our age was, what our relationship status was, whether or not we had kids, and like the phone number to call each other. It's astronomical for us to be able to be there and have that moment. So it was very unique, and it's something that has given me the fortitude to be able to push myself beyond all normal measures. And so we started our relationship. She became pregnant at 7 months pregnancy. Her mother found out she was pregnant and didn't like that idea. And so what took place at that point in time, her mother calls up, says, look, I'm not going to watch your children anymore. You got to figure out what you're going to do. And so we did the only thing that we knew, which was to put her on the next bus back. Those kids had to come first, even though she was 7 months pregnant. And so that's how we got separated. And for 17 years, that's what it was. We were separated for that long. And this is, again, where, those things you question whether you've made the right choice. What steps could I have taken? But the thing is, if you look at what you should have done and you're not looking forward, all you're going to do is trip over what's in front of you. I should have done this. I could have done this. I would have done this. If this only happened, if this only took place, those things will stop you from living your life. Those moments will prevent you from looking at the possibility of what is in front of you. I'm here in Mexico now, but it took years upon years to do that. And a lot of missteps, a lot of issues, a lot of problems.
What were the main sort of reasons for why you were unable to go to Mexico in those years? Was it job and work, or was it visa related?
A combination of things. So what took place for us was immigration, finances. I don't have, any of the financial stability that's needed. I was completely ignorant to how immigration works and didn't understand the steps that it took for it. I don't agree with illegal immigration. I don't agree with it. People are paying these people to get them across illegally. The same amount they're paying them, the same amount as if it was to get them here legally. The only difference really is what boils down to is that you have one person telling you, I'm going to get you across no matter what, because if they don't get them across, then they don't get their money. Then you have another person telling you, I'll get you across, but if I can't get you across, then we're going to have to start from the beginning, and you're going to have to repay everything and then go through the process again, and you're looking at years and years and years of being separated from family. And these moments that mattered, I missed my daughter's first steps, her first words, her first birthday. I missed all of that, and that's stuff you cannot get back. So I understand the plight of the people wanting to come and build a better life for themselves. Immigration was the one thing that kept us apart. So during 2008, we'll go to the recession time period. And during this time period, it was hard for a lot of people. I was working for BMW at the time. I had finished my degree in 2007. I was working for Target. I was working 2 jobs. I was taking care of my mother in America, making sure our rent was paid, making sure all the bills were taken care of. And then I had my wife and kids. They were living in Mexico, and I was taking care of them. So I was taking care of both.
Sorry, were you married at that point as well? Like, had you already gotten married at that point?
So by legal standards, no. It wasn't until 2010 that we were officially married. And people say, well, if you're married, can't she just come? And that's a lot of nomenclature that a lot of people don't see or understand. It's not if, once you're married, she's automatically able to come. You still have to file papers. You still have to show proof that you can support them. During that time, I was making enough money to help support them. And this was in my infancy of immigration. I still had no idea what immigration was. I was working 80 hours a week. It wasn't like, I have free time. I can go look at a book. I can go do this and go do that. It was just work. Have maybe 4 hours of time to myself sometimes in the day. It just depends. And during the time, though, I had gotten laid off from my BMW job. At this point in time, I'm like, so what am I supposed to do? I was taking care of all these bills. I just lost my job. Now I'm not able to pay these bills. I'm not able to take care of this situation. My daughter was already over a year old at that time, and I still did not get to see her. One of the things that forced my hands into what I did was she was severely sick. And even at that point in time, I couldn't really talk to my wife. We had better conversations. We could still communicate better than what we first started out as, but it was one of those things where our communication wasn't great, especially when it comes down to finances as well as medical issues. I happened to call a friend up in Texas. He was from Mexico. So I called him. I said, hey, can you call my wife, find out what's going on? Because the only word that I could understand was appendix. That's what I understood from my wife. And when you talk the appendix, that's the severe issue, especially when you're talking about a year old. And so the issue there was that when she happened to she got sick, they tried to treat her sickness, my child's sickness, and she became worse. And come find out, she was actually allergic to penicillin. So that's what actually made her appendix swell. Once they got that taken care of, then, she was okay. But it was at that point in time, I have no money for a bus ticket. I have no money for a plane ticket. I have nothing. And so at that very point in time, I'm like, the only thing that was free to me, which was walking. And so I walked from Virginia to Mexico to see my daughter for the first time.
From Virginia to Mexico. Can you tell me how many miles is that?
4,000 miles, 4,000 or 5,000 miles, all the way to where we live in Acapulco, Mexico. So that's all the way down south on the west coast side of Mexico, right kind of where it bends is right where Acapulco is. And that's my whole intention really was to walk even through Mexico. It wasn't really until I got to Amarillo, Texas, where I was at after the military and everything, and I was staying on a friend's couch there during that time, and the news popped up, and they stated how dangerous Mexico was and that they advised Americans not to travel through Mexico. I'm like, I've already made it this far. What am I supposed to do now? I'm going to walk through Mexico now. So I had to do a little research and stuff, and fortunately, I don't know why during the time Greyhound ran throughout the country during that time, but you could not buy a ticket from Amarillo to get all the way down to Acapulco. You actually had to get to the border of like El Paso, right on the border, and then you could buy a ticket that would get you all the way down to Acapulco. So I had basically walked the rest of the way to the bus station there and was able to pick up a bus and get myself the rest of the way to Acapulco. In all reality, as much as I don't agree with illegal immigration. It turns out that I was actually illegally in their country for the first time. I had no clue. Not for the first month. You're supposed to get a visa, a tourist visa, and that gives you 6 months of stay time. And I wasn't aware of all of that. So when I got on the bus, I don't know how I got through, but I got through and I was able to go all the way to Acapulco. It wasn't until a month later that I realized, oh, I'm supposed to have this visa. We had to go to the immigration and deal with all that during that time. But I was able to hold my daughter for the first time, and that's what mattered.
Yeah. I'm curious, I do want to talk a little bit more about the journey. To start off with, how did you prepare yourself? What did you choose to carry with you?
My life prepared me for this moment. The military, walk and you run and you do all these things and your body builds you for it. So doing all that kind of prepared me for that. But actually the first initial walk that I had done actually had failed. I went out and I walked from Virginia Beach to Chesapeake, Virginia. It's just one city basically over. I had a little luggage cart, one of those little luggage carts that's foldable that you carry with you in the airport so you can carry your luggage through the airport. I had a luggage attached to that, and that actually failed. I tried, but I'm like, this failed, now what do I do? So I took about a week, I regrouped, I grabbed my military duffel bag. I made a little cord with 2 cliff hooks and some 550 parachute cord. And so that way it would alleviate some of the stress on my shoulders. But I went ahead and filled my military duffel bag and carried that with me for the rest of the way for the first time. That was the first trip. I've actually walked the country 3 times.
That is a huge feat. I don't think there's many people out there in the world that has done anything like this. Like, you would have reached out to some news channels and told them that you did this. Like, that would make for a story, wouldn't it?
And that's the thing, is that I will hope one day that maybe my voice will be heard. I'm hoping for is to be able to be maybe an inspiration for somebody else and say, you know what, if he can do this, I can do this.
How many days did it take you? Like, how long did it take you to get there?
So I walked from July to October. It took me 4 months to do my second walk. And on that second walk, I was walking with a rickshaw cart, what they call a rickshaw cart. It was basically a dolly that you would carry boxes with and stuff. You see these Coca-Cola and all that stuff. And then I had a 3-foot by 3-foot cargo box attached to the dolly that I pulled behind me with one of those harnesses that people happen to hang off the side of buildings to clean the windows with and stuff. Yes. I created that system where the harness would help pull the weight. The first walk really taught me about my second walk. When it starts to downpour rain, you're just stuck in it. There is no, I'm going to go inside to get out of the rain. So my first walk taught me about my second walk. And my second walk was more so, it was about two reasons why I did it. One was to raise awareness about families being separated and having all those things.
Just to kind of delve a little bit more into the journey, that very first walk, if you can just walk me through, how did you sort of go? You mentioned it was like about four months. That was second. So I'm guessing the first one might have been even longer, isn't it?
Well, honestly, it was actually faster, a lot faster.
Okay.
But so to get into the first walk, what really took place with that was that I had no clue. I had a destination. This is where I need to be. This is how I'm going to get there. I'm going to walk. There was a little bit of planning because, again, you didn't have the GPS like you do now. Again, a man of no money, I don't have access to those expensive phones at that time. So I went to MapQuest. This was before Google Maps. Right. I went to MapQuest and I printed out my route. I printed it out and said, okay, this is the route that I need to take. Okay, how am I going to get there? And so I basically printed out sheet by sheet, and had an idea of where I was going. And the thing is that people would pick me up and help me get around faster. Mostly, usually, police officers. They're like, I don't want you in my town. So honestly, they were being nice and helpful, but they're like, I can get you out of my town. I can get you to the county line of my district, and then drop you off and you continue on your way. Any little bit of help helped, any little bit of support like that helped me. During that time, I made it, still lost in essence of where I was headed because I had a certain route. This is where I was going. But when somebody picks you up, they're like, oh, I know a better route for you. You should go here. And then you're at their free will. At that point in time, you're kind of like just along for the ride. So they would drop you off, and then I'd be way off the map that I originally printed. I'm like, okay, now what do I do? How do I go to this location or this place? So they might have given me like $20 or something. I would go to the local gas station and pick up a local map to kind of find my way back to where I needed to be. Right. And that happened multiple times with police picking me up, with, people picking me up. So it actually took me about 2 weeks to get where I needed to be. Now, the bus took about 3 days or so to get from the border all the way to Acapulco. And even still, man, I didn't know Spanish really well at that time either. And I was told to stay on the bus, but it actually took me into the opposite direction of where I was going, to Acapulco. So I had to stay there for a while before I could get on to the next bus.
And how were you sort of like financing in terms of like where you were staying and your food? Like where were you sleeping in those days?
Outside. Yep.
So you're really, really like vulnerable in a sense to being robbed, being, hurt, being...
Yeah. So what I would be is I would not walk during the nights. For me, it was a no-no because I wanted to make sure that I was visible. So sun goes down, I go down. Sun comes up, I get up. So when I left, the very first time I left, it was in February. So we're talking freezing weather. There was one time where I woke up and my feet literally felt like I was walking on blocks of ice. Like I could not feel my feet whatsoever. I did have a sleeping bag that I would rest on, and I would try to cover myself up, things of that nature. I would use the military duffel bag as a pillow. But yeah, during the first walk, it happened to be that where I would rest is just off on the side of the road. And that would be it. The second walk taught me about the first walk, and I had the dolly, and the box created it to where the lid would open up and would give me space to be able to sleep, not directly on the ground and stuff. Right. And so, I would use that box as my shelter, and things of that nature. I was fortunate for the help that I did get. I was able to get a bus ticket, that got me to see my wife and kids.
Was there at any point, did you actually find yourself in danger?
There were sometimes there was more the police that tried to warn me about things, especially going through Memphis and Nashville. Those were the two areas that were the worst in crime and things of that nature, that the police were really concerned for my safety and telling me to try to move. Usually what I would do is, my whole goal was I would walk for at least 12 hours a day, and I would clear at least 25 miles a day. So, I would make sure either I would be walking through the town and be basically at the other end of the town, or if it was getting really late, I would stop right before the town and then stop there. So I wouldn't be in a city or a town or something along those lines where I wouldn't be bothering people or people wouldn't be bothering me. There was in New Mexico, there was actually a sign that said, keep your kids and pets close, wolves in the area. I'm like, what happens if I actually happen to get into something like that? So I had a tornado that had touched down a mile off of my path. I actually had hunkered down. That was one day that I did hunker down in a hotel. And I'm fortunate, very fortunate, because it was a huge storm, torrential downpour rain, everything. And I happened to stay in this hotel, but as I was walking the next day, I heard that there was a tornado touchdown literally a mile off the path of what I was walking. If I was in the middle of a storm, there were several times that there were heavy downpour rains and stuff in storms. So what I would do is I would basically crawl inside the box. The box was only 3 foot by 3 foot. I'm a 6-foot person. So you have to imagine, but I would cram myself into this box, close the lid, and hang on for dear life. Hoping, that I'd ride out the storm in the box.
I just can't even picture how this must have kind of looked. But do you feel like even in terms of some of the people that you met that helped you along the way, the conversations that you had with some people, even some of the beautiful sceneries and sights that you kind of saw, can you talk to me about some of those?
Absolutely. There was a woman by the name of 𝗪𝗀𝗪. She was going through cancer treatments and stuff, and she was on remission during the time, but she was saying that it was just starting to come back and that she was starting to have to go through these treatments, and she was getting these meal tickets and things of that nature. And she had brought in me some food and shared her story with me. And I'm like, she's going through all of this, and yet she's still kind enough to bring me some food, even though in the midst of what she was going through. And keeping up, it wasn't until years later, but learning of her, she had actually passed due to the cancer. I had one other person that followed me all the way from, not physically followed me, but had followed me kind of all the way throughout my trip. And he's actually the reason why I was able to get back on my second trip. His name was David Cook. And I actually, in my book, I have a whole chapter on him. But he was my main support, in essence, for my trip, walking all the way from Virginia to California. And he is the reason why I was able to get back as quickly as I was back to Virginia and then go see my daughter for her 3rd birthday. That was my whole second trip. The 3rd birthday and the 15th birthday are the most important birthdays. And so I made it a point that I would make it no matter what to see her 3rd birthday. And so I was able to do that. I did make it all the way to California, but by the time I got to California, my body was torn apart. I mean, my legs were rubbed raw. I had blisters on my feet. Everything was falling apart. And so I actually had made a decision. I had to call my wife and say, look, I've made it this far. Basically, I had cut the trip, my initial plan to cut it short. I made it to California, and I was going to make it all the way to San Diego, California. But I was right at a point of right on the border of Arizona and California, and I called up my wife. My body was burnt, beaten, bloody, all of that stuff. This was in the summer months, so the hottest you could imagine it was there. And so, first trip, winter, second trip, summer. Not good choices. I went ahead and I stopped there. There were so many people that did treat me with kindness and stuff. Many people didn't understand why I was doing what I was doing. Now, I had a big box on the back, and it said, what would you do on the back and the top of it, so when it's lifted up, you could still see the message. On the sides, I actually had a image of my family, about 3 or 4 different images on the side of the box, and it said, have you seen this family at the top, like a missing person, have you seen this family? And on the bottom of it, it said, neither have I. And so it was the reference of, have you seen this family? And so it was my attempt to relay a message to people to say, this is the family, this is what I'm missing. Some people would take it as an actual, how are they missing? What happened to them? People were questioning things. I didn't get a chance to bring them to America. And this was in 2010 when I did that walk. So my youngest would have been 3 at the time, obviously. She was just turning 3. My second child would have been 6, and my oldest child would have been 9. Still young enough to get them to come to America and start their lives in America and do all of that. But I didn't get enough and so I did everything that I could. And I'm still doing everything I can. I'm 45 years old. I'm about to have a child. And I have 42 days to make a difference for this child. And that's what I'm trying to do right now. Every single step of the way, every single day, I am pushing myself. So the thing is that I was never there for my child when she was growing up. Right now, everything is completely new to me. My wife left at 7 months pregnancy, and I never got to see any of that type of life from 7 months pregnancy all the way up to a year and 4 months old. You know, so I missed all of that, and those kids needed me, and I missed their lives so much, and it wasn't a choice that I made easily. I'm very blessed for the woman that I call my wife, because not a lot of women can put up with that. You know, she is the reason why the kids respect me the way they do. It's because of her that I have the presence in their life, even though I wasn't present. Due to immigration, due to distance, due to the financial situations, I was earning money, but it wasn't enough to sponsor my family to come to America. And because of that, you know, they were having to stay in Mexico. And eventually they grew up. You know, their roots became Mexico, and their dreams no longer entailed coming to America.
Yeah. I mean, it really is such an inspirational story, Nick. For a third person listening to it, hearing, you know, the kind of links that you went through, quite literally, to be able to meet your family. I'm curious, what was your wife's reaction when you kind of showed up for the very first time, when you saw her and your child?
Initially, almost every single time, she would leave the kids at home. So I would get to the home and then see them, and they were waiting on me when I got home. It was just, she was so happy to see me with open arms, you know. And every single time that we had to part, it was one of the most difficult things, because we didn't know the next time that we would see each other, and sometimes it would be years. Like how we have video calls now and stuff. Back at that time, it wasn't there. They didn't have these things, you know, Skype and all that, you know, wasn't really there. And if it was there, I didn't have access to it because of lack of funds. So, you know, it was one of those things where, you know, when you're a poor man, you don't really have the advantage of or the luxury of just being able to pick up a phone or to know where you're going, you know, things of that nature. I can make all the excuses in the world for things, you know, but money speaks volumes in this world, and it opens doors that could have been closed to you. But if I had an actual team of supporters that said, you know what, we'll follow you, we'll make sure you get there. That's the whole thing, is that I would love to still spread the message and the importance of family and the unity and what it means to a family. There are those statistics out there that because of my life and what I've lived through, a pedophile father, an alcoholic stepfather, those situations should have demanded me to be in the realm of having addictions. And I've been blessed. Like I said, my busy hands have kind of kept me from falling into those traps. I really do believe that.
And even for someone who's only had broken families, to kind of have such a strong will to make a family, pull a family together, and to be that kind of role model of a father, it's hard when you didn't have that kind of role model yourself. I was also curious to ask you about your daughter now, who's probably turned, you mentioned, about 18. What was that like for her now that she can kind of comprehend and understand things? How's that been, sort of telling her that this is the kind of lengths that you went through for her, to be there for her?
I wish you understood that. Honestly, that's the hardest thing right now, is that she doesn't understand. Even to this point in time, she doesn't understand the lengths that I've went to. And I've been trying to figure that out, how to discuss this with her, because she doesn't speak English. Even now, our relationship is strained. She's going to a university for becoming a nurse right now. And we've been trying to put her through school for that. And because of my wife and stuff, we've been able to deal with that. How do I share this story with her? How do I tell her these things? Her relationship with me is strained. She doesn't understand the reasons I wasn't there when she needed me. She doesn't understand what I was doing. I don't know how much she knows, okay, or how much difficulty she knows. But for the almost 7 years of this past life, so since she was 10, I've been living out of a car in America. I was working, I was putting my wife through school. She was going to cosmetology. I was taking care of the kids. I was making sure that they had what they needed. So I did everything that I could for the 7 years. I gave every penny that I could without making a car payment and making gas in the car and all that stuff, and making sure that the car was operational and running and doing all those things. Even still, on my car, I had an advertisement on my car that promoted my website. I don't think she understands the amount that I went through to attempt to make sure that she had the life she needed, even though I wasn't physically there for her, and I wished I was. There's so much that took place. She had an issue and got involved with an older person here in Mexico, and I had to get them separated. And so I came here to Mexico for a trip. I was here for a week because I had a week's vacation from work. And so I told her, okay, I wanted to see how serious the situation was. She was talking, she was 14 at the time. She was talking about going to Tijuana with this person. No, not going to happen. So once I saw the seriousness and what level she was at, before I had even came back to Mexico to see her, I had told my wife, you're going to pick up a ticket for yourself and our daughter to go to Cancun. She has an aunt that lives in Cancun. And I said, we might not need the ticket, but just in case, I want it ready. So that way, as soon as we make the decision of what's going to take place, she's on the next plane out to go to live with her aunt and continue her school there. And she actually got to finish school about a year early because of that. It's the same thing with my son. My son had issues. I found out later on, but he happened to have an issue where my son happened to be going to school. He was given a drink, an alcoholic drink, a beer, which is common for them to be drinking in Mexico and stuff, but they had slipped something into that drink. Now, he has cerebral palsy, so the effects on a regular human was 10 times the amount on him. And so immediately, once that took place, we picked him up out of that school and put him into a new school, a better school or whatnot, and he was able to finish school early. All my kids was able to graduate from regular school. Because of me being in America, because of the years that I lived in America, because of the years that I was earning money in America. See, people don't understand also in Mexico, like right now, working a full day's worth of work here in Mexico, you earn $10 for the entire day, not 1 hour. One day. Where in America, if you work for 1 hour, you're going to get $10. Yeah. It's a huge difference. And so me being in America gave that opportunity to pick up my child, my boy, and put him into another school. It gave me the opportunity to buy that plane ticket and say, okay, you're going to Cancun to finish your education. I'm not going to let you go to Tijuana and do have all this issue where in Tijuana, there's a huge prostitution and where women get severely, and this is what I saw. And this is not what my daughter saw. She saw freedom. When I went to Cancun for her graduation, I came here, I was able to see her graduation in Cancun and then bring her back to Acapulco with us so that she could live with us and be able to spend time with me, which is what initially, that's what I wanted for her. I wanted her to be able to live and to be able to learn who I was and me learn who she is, but the relationship is broken.
I really, really, really do hope that it kind of at some point resonates with your daughter as well. She's still quite young, and I think, it takes maybe some time to kind of hit a certain level of maturity. And as soon as the other person is like open to listening to it, things will change. And I really hope that she does come around and see that story that I think the rest of the world is starting to hear today. But final plugins, Timothy, tell us about your book, tell us about your business. Please do share that with us.
Well, to talk about the book, and actually what you say right there, the thing is we have a language barrier, a Spanish-English language barrier. And so I don't know if you've gotten to visit my website yet, the FamilyReuniteNetwork.com, but those have blogs on there of who I am, of the stories that I want to share, of the knowledge that I have, the experiences that I've had through the struggles of who we become. The book is also that. It's to share the story of my 3 walks, and it's to share the story of how I met my wife and kids. It's to share the knowledge that I have been exposed to, and that I may put it upon others, that they can learn a lesson and maybe be inspired to be more than what they are right now. But that book is also for my kids, so that even when I can no longer breathe, they can go back, even though they might only know Spanish, that they can go and use the technology to be able to go and translate. I am actually working on a second book as well called Stumbling in the Dark, Looking for the Light Switch, but this one is going to be under genetic predisposition, basically a nature versus nurture. So who are we as people? What is it? My real father was a pedophile, but I have his genes. But does that make me him? It doesn't. And so it's that nature. I have the same hairstyle. I have the same eye color. But what makes me him and what makes me me? The nature versus nurture, genetic predisposition, it's what makes us us. And so, the stumbling in the dark, looking for the light switch, it's what we all do. We're looking for that pathway that says, and that light switch that says, this is what I'm supposed to be doing. This is where I'm supposed to be at right now. That's what that title drives from, is that stumbling in the dark. We don't know where we're headed, but we're looking for that aha moment. This is where I'm supposed to be.
Wow. Timothy, thank you so much for sharing your story and being vulnerable over here. I feel like there's so much we can take away from your journey, and I feel like our listeners are going to have so much inspiration just like I am right now. So thank you once again.
The one final thing I do have to say is just love your family. Hold on to them. Every single moment matters. We don't understand sometimes how much it means, but just that getting up and making breakfast, making the bed, it seems like a simple task, but it's those little moments that make all the difference in the world for your family, for your kids, and for your spouses.
If you enjoyed the episode and would like to help support the show, please follow and subscribe. You can rate and review your feedback on any of our platforms listed in the description. I'd like to recognize our guests who are vulnerable and open to share their life experiences with us. Thank you for showing us we're human. Also, a thank you to our team who worked so hard behind the scenes to make it happen.
Lucas, Stefan Menzel.
The show would be nothing without you. I'm Jenica, host and writer of the show, and you're listening to Multispective.